Hey everyone, if you're deep in the trenches of RE prep, you know that just one tricky detail question can be the difference between a pass and a fail. So today, we are going to tackle one of the biggest culprits that trips people up on the PPD and PDD exams, the humble slip joint. It sounds kind of simple, right? But trust me, getting this right is your secret weapon. Let's crack this code together.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to dig into why buildings are, believe it or not, constantly moving. Then, we'll get into the brilliant solution, the slip joint. After that, we'll break down the exact details you're going to see on exam day, clear up some major confusion between different joints, and then I'll give you the ultimate cheat sheet to lock it all in. Sound good? Let's go. All right, let's kick things off with section 1, the unstill building. See, before we can really appreciate the solution, we have to understand the problem. And the big secret, the one that causes so many headaches, is that buildings are never, ever standing still. So that begs the question, why do buildings move? I mean, it kind of goes against everything we think about architecture, doesn't it? We build these massive, solid structures that are supposed to be permanent. But the truth is, a building is way more like a living thing. It's constantly shifting and adjusting to everything happening around it. I mean, just look at all the forces at play here. You've got the sun beating down, causing materials to literally swell up, and then the cold comes and shrinks them back down. You've got plain old gravity, causing that heavy concrete slab to sag just a little bit over time. That's deflection. And to make it even trickier, different materials move at totally different rates. Oh, and then you throw in wind and earthquakes, and you've basically got a constant battle going on inside the building itself. So, what happens if we just ignore all this movement? What if we just bolt everything together nice and tight? Well, you get absolute chaos. Those forces have to go somewhere, and they'll escape by creating these awful cracks in your drywall, buckling a perfectly good brick facade, or shattering expensive finishes. This right here is a classic RE trap. They'll show you a failure like this and ask you to figure out why it happened, and the answer is almost always restricted movement. And that brings us perfectly to our next section, the genius of sliding. What if instead of trying to fight this impossible battle against physics, we could just outsmart it? What if we designed a connection that just lets things move? And that, my friends, brings us to the hero of our story, the slip joint. Now, the official definition is beautifully simple. A slip joint does two things, and only two things. One, it allows two parts of a building to move past each other. And two, it does this without transferring any structural load between them. That's it. That's the whole magic trick. Listen, if you memorize one single sentence for your exam, please make it this one. This is the logic that will unlock any question they throw at you about slip joints. It's all right there. It allows differential movement, and it prevents load transfer. Seriously, burn this into your brain. Okay, let's break that down even simpler into what I call the slip joint mantra. Think of this as your quick 3-point checklist for the exam. Does the detail let things move? Check. Does it stop a structural load from going where it shouldn't? Check. Is it dealing with two different things moving in two different ways? Check. If you can answer yes to all three, you are looking at a slip joint. Okay, theory is great and all, but we know the PDE exam is all about real-world application. So let's jump into section 3 and see where these things actually show up in the details. And here it is, a PDD favorite, the top of an interior non-load-bearing wall. Look real close at this detail. That concrete slab above is going to sag a little bit. It's just what concrete does. Now, if that wall was jammed right up against the bottom of it, the slab would literally crush it. But instead, look, the metal studs are cut a little short, and they sit inside this deeper metal track. It's so clever. The slab can deflect down all at once, but it transfers zero load to the wall below. The wall is totally fine. Okay, here's another classic, the shelf angle that holds up your brick veneer. In this case, you have two materials that behave completely differently. The brick facade will actually get a tiny bit taller over time as it absorbs moisture. At the same time, the building's steel or concrete frame might shrink or deflect downwards. So that small horizontal gap you see right under the steel angle, that's our slip joint. It's filled with some kind of squishy, compressible material that just lets the massive frame and the brittle brick slide past each other. No stress, no cracks. And finally, picture a long, dark metal coping on a parapet wall, just baking in the summer sun. That metal wants to get longer, a lot longer. If we tried to make it out of one continuous piece, it would just warp and buckle into a total mess. So instead, we detail it with these simple overlapping slip joints. One piece can slide nice and smoothly over the next as it expands and contracts, all while keeping the rain out. It's such an elegant solution for thermal movement. Okay, this next part is huge because it's a major point of confusion and a classic exam trap. You have got to know that not all joints are created equal. So let's get this straight right now so you don't lose any easy points on this. All right, focus in on this chart for a second because this is where people really get mixed up. A slip joint, like we've been talking about, is for small-scale sliding between two different parts. Now, an expansion joint is for massive movement. We're talking a complete separation between huge parts of a building, like two different wings. And a control joint is something else entirely. It's basically a planned weak line to tell a single material, like a concrete slab, exactly where you want it to crack as it cures. So think about scale, sliding components, separating buildings, or controlling cracks. And just to show you how this all connects, because for PPD and PDD you have to think about the whole system, that little slip joint has other jobs too. It needs to have a flexible membrane across it to keep the air barrier continuous for energy efficiency. And what if that's a fire-rated wall? Well, the joint itself needs to be stuffed with a special fire-rated system that can still move while stopping a fire from getting through. It's never just one thing in architecture, is it?
Whew, we have covered a ton of ground. So now, for our final section, I have boiled everything we just talked about down to the one single slide you need to screenshot, memorize, and look at right before you walk into that testing center.
Here it is. The purpose: allow movement, prevent load transfer. The key locations: tops of partitions, shelf angles, coping. If you see an exam question that says anything about a slab deflecting and cracking a wall, your brain should immediately scream, slip joint. And please, remember the traps. It is not a structural connection, and its main job is not waterproofing. Its number one benefit is preventing cracks and damage to finishes. This is it. This is your high-yield summary.
So I'm going to leave you with a little challenge to take with you as you study. From now on, whenever you look at a set of drawings, go on a hunt for the slip joints. And even better, try to find details where one is missing and see if you can predict the exact failure that would happen. That right there, that kind of active thinking is what's going to get you a pass. You've got this. Good luck.